The young man says to the young woman, "How beautiful you are, my darling. How beautiful. Your eyes are like doves." The young woman responds, "You are so handsome, my love, pleasing beyond words. The soft grass is our bed. Fragrant cedar branches are the beams of our house, and pleasant-smelling firs are the rafters." I am the spring crocus blooming on the Sharon plain, the lily of the valley. The young man responds, "Like a lily among thistles is my darling among young women." Young woman. "Like the finest apple tree in the orchard is my lover among other young men. I sit in his delightful shade and taste his delicious fruit. He escorts me to the banquet hall. It's obvious how much he loves me. Strengthen me with raisin cakes, refresh me with apples, for I am weak with love. His left arm is under my head, and his right arm embraces me. Promise me, O women of Jerusalem, by the gazelles and wild deer, not to awaken love until the time is right."
Is it possible to make an idol out of romantic love? Well, I think you know the answer to that. We could look at pop songs and get our message from there, like this one from The Temptations. "Gonna build my whole world around you. You are all that matters." Or the one from Celine Dion, "If we believe in each other, there's nothing we can't do." Or the one by Sting, "You're my religion, you're my church, you're my holy grail at the end of my search." Whoa, guys, these are good pickup lines. You use these. These are good stuff. This is good work. Or the one from Hosier. It shows how out of it I am. But anyway, here's the one. "She tells me worship in the bedroom. The only heaven I'll be sent is when I'm alone with you." The only heaven. So the answer to the question is yes. Yes, we make idols we worship at the altar of romantic love all the time. It's not just possible, it's actually inevitable. It's such a strong, powerful feeling, the way we define romantic love. And why is it? Why is it that we go after that so much? Well, there's a deeper thing, which I believe is what the Song of Solomon is about. It's about intimacy. That's what we long for. Ever since the Garden of Eden, where they had deep intimacy, Adam and Eve, with each other and with God. And then when they sinned, it was broken, it was distorted, and mankind has been on the search for intimacy ever since. And the promise of intimacy comes very strongly with romantic love. I think we confuse the two sometimes. It's dangerous. Every single relational difficulty that I've seen is because of a distorted view of that. Expectations, something we expect the other one to be for us, and they have no shot of being that. We expect them to fulfill our deepest desires. We expect them to know us intimately, and they can't fulfill that. And it causes tension, right? Unfulfilled expectations. Well, maybe we need to readjust our expectations. Well, the Song of Solomon is about love. And you know what love is. Love is laying your life down for the other person. It's not expecting from them, it's giving. That's the definition of love. So, what we have here in our passage today is still pre-marriage, you might say, if we're going to put a storyline on it. The consummation of the marriage isn't until later in the book. This is still, they could be engaged, maybe they're courting, who knows, but they're talking back and forth. And I want to remind you, this is God's perfect definition of love, which we are not matching. We are not living up to this in any way. This is his perfect definition of love. So we're going to look at this now. Let's just work our way through this passage that Andrew just read. Verse 15, she says to him, "Behold, you are beautiful, my love. Behold, you are beautiful, your eyes are doves." Now, I don't know about doves. I actually went and looked up doves, tried to find out what's the thing about doves. You know, why is their eyes like doves or whatever? Didn't find a thing. Maybe, I didn't spend like exhaustive time looking at doves or anything. But, doves are great birds. I mean, they, especially white doves. People release doves when there's something new or signify life. Or we know that the dove was the thing that brought the branch back to Noah when it was they were actually down and the earth was drying out, right? And so he sent a dove out and it brought a branch back. So a dove is kind of has a really good figure. Maybe her eyes, it was something in her eyes that looked like a dove, but clearly he's smitten with her. He's especially smitten with her eyes. Now, guys, I don't know about you and your wives, if there's something about your wife that just smote you. Can you do that in the past tense? When I was a sophomore at Covenant College and my wife was a freshman, we saw each other across a crowded room. Not really. We got signed up to play. We both signed up for a backgammon tournament, and somebody paired us together. We hadn't met before. And there we were, and we sat down to play backgammon, and she didn't know how to play. For those of you that know my wife know that whenever there's a game available, it doesn't matter if she knows how to play or not. She's there. She's going to play games. And all she did was sit there and smile across the board at me. And that was that. She has an amazing smile. And it smote me, for saying it in the past tense. I was smitten. She just kept smiling as I taught her to play and then beat her soundly. We got that off to the right beginning right there and then. There's nothing wrong with physical attraction. You know that? That's a God thing. There's nothing wrong with physical attraction. So how does the woman respond to his talking about her eyes that way? Verse 16, "Behold, you are beautiful, my beloved, truly delightful. Our couch is green. The beams of our house are cedar. Our rafters are pine." What does he mean? What does she mean by our couch is green? Now, I'm going to tell you what some of the commentators said. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this from the front, but I'm going to say it anyway. They're saying she wanted to have sex in the woods. Does that sound right to you? I don't think so. But I'm just giving you a commentator's holy men of God that are writing about God's word in very holy terms said that. Okay, so I've just shared it with you now. And if I can't say that, then I'm in trouble. I don't think that's what it's talking about at all, about being in the woods or having intimacy like that. What's happening here, or what seems to be happening here, is that as she gets closer to her beloved, as she begins to, probably they're engaged, probably they are, they're betrothed to one another, they're waiting for the day of the wedding, and she begins to dream of what their life is going to be in the future. And so when you talk about green, you're talking about growth. You're talking about multiplying. I think when she says our couch is green, like any ancient Near Eastern woman, she's thinking about having children. This would have been her life's goal. You were nobody in those days if you didn't have children. That's what I think she would have been thinking about. She wants to create a home. She wants to live in a home with her husband. That's why she says the beams are cedar, the rafters are pine. She's talking about a home that they will build. They will have children. This is a dream of hers. This is what she is longing for. So her passionate thoughts about him. and being with him in every way include marrying him, being committed to him, and being with him. That's what they're talking about, right? Somehow in our day and age, we have divorced sex from marriage. They're not things that go together anymore. We've completely divorced these things: marriage, offspring, and sex, right? And so today, sex is just to satisfy an urge. I read this from the Wall Street Journal. It's an article by Mark Regnerus entitled "Cheap Sex and the Decline of Marriage." And listen to what he says about a 24-year-old named Kevin. Kevin, a 24-year-old recent college graduate from Denver, wants to get married someday and is almost 100% positive that he will. But not soon, he says, because I'm not done being stupid yet. I still want to go out and have sex with 1,000,000 girls. He believes that he's figured out how to do that. Girls are easier to mislead than guys just by lying or just not really caring. If you know what girls want, then you know you should not give that to them until the proper time. If you do that strategically, then you can really have anything you want, whether it's a relationship, sex, or whatever. You have the control. So he says this: Kevin was one of 100 men and women from a cross-section of American communities that my team and I interviewed 5 years ago as we sought to understand how adults in their 20s and early 30s think about the relationships. He sounds like a jerk, but it's hard to convince him that his strategy won't work, because it has. For him and countless other men, people like Kevin expect to make the transition from this selfish outlook to a committed relationship. But it isn't that easy. Psychologist Scott Stanley of the University of Denver sees visible daily sacrifices, such as accepting inconveniences in order to see a woman, as the way that men typically show their developing commitment. It signals the expectation of a future together. Such small instances of self-sacrificing love may sound simple, but they are less likely to develop when past and present relationships are founded on the expectation of cheap sex. So Kevin, for some reason, he knows what it takes to be in a long-term relationship. He will have to give up being selfish, but he just doesn't want to yet. He doesn't feel like it because he's having too much fun with it. So the operative word there is selfishness. He knows that the way he's going about his life is completely selfish. He doesn't really care. Brothers and sisters, isn't this the issue in the world today? Isn't selfishness the issue that makes our world not a better place to live? This is why all wars are fought. This is why conflict erupts. This is why there's so much relational hardship. This is why anxiety medication is at an all-time high. This is why divorce is so prevalent. We are consumed with ourselves. We are consumed with our own needs and what we want, and we use people to get it. Let's keep going. She says in chapter 2, verse 1, I'm a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valleys. It's translated there, lily, a rose of Sharon, but really it means a wildflower. She's just claiming to be an ordinary wildflower among many. She doesn't think she's anything special, and she tells that to her man. But he counters this. He says, as a lily among brambles, so is my love among the young women. What is he saying to her? He's saying, you stand out from all others. They're brambles. You are the lily. This is what exclusivity looks like. As the song goes, I only have eyes for you. See, that's the kind of declaration that only fosters love. It promotes love. It deepens love. When you make a declaration of exclusivity, you are the one that I love. I love you above all others. I will love no one else like I love you. And so what does she do in response to that? Verse 3, as an apple tree among the trees of the forest, so is my beloved among the young men. With great delight I sat in his shadow, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. She's not talking about physical love there, I don't believe. What she is saying is this. He's a tree, it means he's strong. She sits in his shadow, he's been a protector for her. His fruit is sweet to her taste. He is a provider. This is relational language. It's giving us the job description for men. To be strong, to be a secure place, to be a provider. Now, it's not talking about vocation or anything like that and who earns the money or who earns most of the money or who stays. I mean, I've seen effective marriages that work where the guy stays home with the kids and the wife goes off to work. And, all those things depend on your gifts and abilities and all these kinds of things. I don't think it's talking about that, but I do think that the man provides leadership. And what does that leadership look like? Leadership that's exclusive just for her. And he provides a safe place. And he provides for her, he might provide a place where she can be and feel that she is taken into account and that her needs are being met. And it's a place of flourishing for her. That is the responsibility of the men. To provide a place of flourishing for your wife. I think that's what it's talking about. Are we hearing this? Most of the time, I think we're obsessing over whether she's meeting our needs or not. We get upset because we don't get enough intimacy. We get frustrated if she doesn't fawn over us. And yet the passage says the opposite, right? He declares her to be his own. It's what he is saying, or she says right here in the next phrase, verse 4, he brought me to the banqueting house and his banner over me is love. That's a summary statement. It's a summary statement of what she said. He has brought me in. I am exclusively his. I am loved by him. I feel secure. This is a place of flourishing. Oh, his banner over me is love. That's the ideal marriage. She gladly sits under his banner. So when you look at the perfect law of God, which this is, how many of us have measured up to this? Who of us hasn't failed most of the time miserably in making this a reality? Which of our wives has not felt manipulated at times, or underappreciated at times, or used at times? Sorry, men, I'm picking on you. Picking on me. So notice her response. After all that, she feels so much love in her heart for him. She says in verse 5, sustain me with raisins, refresh me with apples, for I am sick with love. His left hand is under my head, and his right hand embraces me. Now it's getting steamy. Now it's getting steamy. She feels so safe with him, so protected, so loved, so edified, that she longs for intimacy with him. She longs for physical intimacy with him. She is sick with love. That's what it's saying here. His left hand is under her head. His right hand embraces her. This is what she's saying. This is the desire of her heart. This kind of love. But here's the thing. The marriage is not here yet. It's not here yet. And though this relationship is building to a fever pitch where most people would just jump into bed, that's what you do. But not here. Not here. Look at verse 7. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or the does of the field, that you not stir up or awaken love until it pleases. She's saying, this is my desire, and this is the natural outgrowth of a marriage ceremony, but it's not time yet. It is not time. We're not going to awaken that yet because it clouds everything. She's making a plea to the other women. Don't wake it before it's time. It's this monster that raises its head. We have so mixed this up in our culture. Sex is like a drug. Once you engage in that, once you go down that road, you are not thinking clearly in the relationship. It is so powerful that it overshadows anything else that you might be thinking about, especially when there's no marriage commitment at all. And so the warning is there for all of us as well. I looked up on the web, I was looking up for what makes for a good marriage. And I decided, I already know what Christian sites are going to say. I decided to look it up all on secular sites. People who have looked into marriages that have stayed together for a while. And here's a couple of the answers. Here's one from emotionalaffair.org. Now, I didn't delve too deeply into that one. But anyway, here's what emotionalaffair.org says. They're actually really good things. Trust, love, being best friends, practicing kindness and respect, having a shared purpose, managing conflict, staying committed to one another, effective communication, patience. All good things. From marriage.com, be independent, be a good listener, agree to disagree, communicate, know your partner's love language, acceptance, take responsibility, never take one another for granted, date night, add romance, and then at the end, keep intimacy alive. From the Health Encyclopedia from the University of Rochester Medical Center, communicate clearly and often. Tell your spouse that you're thankful for having him or her in your life. Make time for you two as a couple. Plan for some personal time. Understand that it's okay to disagree. Build trust. Learn to forgive. None of it has intimacy as the first thing, as the main thing. It's always a sideline. It's always at the end. That's always something that comes after all of these things are in place. So why in our culture is the main emphasis on a physical relationship? We've gone off the rails. See, compatibility in the bedroom seems to be the number one issue. That's why people want to live together, want to see if we're compatible there. Because if we're not compatible there, we're not going to last. Well, I want to give some news. You're probably not going to last unless you have some change and do some of the other things. See, what we're doing here is our kids are growing up in a porn culture. And when you do that, it changes the chemistry of your brain. And so kids are beginning to ask one another for crazier and crazier things that can't possibly end well. It's a false narrative, and it does so much damage. And our passage says, do not stir up or awaken love. I think the author of Song of Solomon knows exactly what the issues really are. If you don't want to wait, it's very likely going to come back to bite you. So our culture worships before the idol of romantic love, but like any idol, it falls flat. It may be exciting. Kevin may be having a good time, but we'll see what happens with him and his relationships in the future. Most people jump from relationship to relationship because they haven't figured it out. So what Song of Solomon is telling us about here this morning is about a different kind of relationship. He sets the ideal for what a marriage should look like: long-term commitment, tremendous communication, romantic pursuit, desire. Yes, there's passion in all of that, but it's got to be built on a foundation that is very different, that is mutual love, that is mutual self-sacrifice for one another. But here's the deal about relationship. You do not need romantic love to have intimacy. You don't need that. That's a big lie of our culture. That's why this book is as much for singles as it is for married couples. It really is. It's a book about intimacy. And everything in this book points beyond itself to the only one that could do the relational thing perfectly. Because none of us have gotten it right. I think about Jesus, who never got married, but he's the definition of intimacy. He's the definition of loving well, of laying down his life, of honesty, of pursuing relationships. He was the example of that. Jesus sought after his own. He pursued them with unabated love. He gave himself continually for his people. In the ultimate act of love, he sacrificed himself for our sakes. Brothers and sisters, what he's calling us to is absolutely outrageous. Nobody thinks like this. He's actually calling us to lay our lives down for one another. Yes, married couples, you're laying your life down for one another. But yes, everybody in the room, we're laying our lives down for one another. See, the beginning of intimacy is when we say, my needs don't matter here. What actually matters is your wholeness, your joy, your well-being, and I am committed to that. I don't need to be noticed. I want to notice you. I don't need to be at the center. I want you to be at the center. I don't need to have everything I want. I want you to have what you want. Imagine what it would look like in relationships if both people were saying that. Do you know how impossible that kind of outrageous love is? Because we're so consumed with ourselves. Most of us look for love in all the wrong places. We look for intimacy in all the wrong places. We've manipulated. We've not loved well. I am either the all out there in your face or the silent treatment. These are my manipulative go-tos with my wife. If I think I'm going to get there by being in your face, I'm in your face. If I think I can go a couple days on the silent treatment until she responds, I'll probably do that. It's manipulation. We do this all the time, often without even knowing that we're doing it. So we've looked for love in the wrong places, in the wrong way. And then we look at Jesus' sacrifice. How he did that to forgive us. I think we often think, I think that's just too good to be true. I don't know that he could love like that. We talk about it all the time. We talk about it, but somehow it hasn't grabbed our lives. Like the Kierkegaard quote, once we understand and have entered into the world of love, then all we want to do is love. If we don't want to love, then it means we haven't understood how much he loved us and laid down his life for our manipulative ways. That's what he did. See, we think Jesus could never love me like that. I've turned my back on him too often. I've followed my own way. I've been unfaithful with my thoughts, with my actions. Why would he love me like that? Let me illustrate that with this story from Johnny Erickson Tada, who was paralyzed in a diving accident when she was a teenager. She draws parallels between her own wedding day and how Jesus loves us. She said, I felt awkward as my girlfriend strained to shift my paralyzed body into a cumbersome wedding gown. No amount of corseting and binding my body gave me a perfect shape. The dress just didn't fit well. Then as I was wheeling into the church, I glanced down and noticed that I'd accidentally run over the hem of my dress, leaving a greasy tire mark. My paralyzed hands couldn't hold the bouquet of daisies that lay off center in my lap. And my chair, though decorated for the wedding, was still a big, clunky gray machine with belts, gears, and ball bearings. I certainly didn't feel like the picture-perfect bride in a bridal magazine. I inched my chair closer to the last pew to catch a glimpse of Ken in front. There he was, standing tall and stately in his formal attire. I saw him looking for me, craning his neck, just to look up the aisle. My face flushed, and I suddenly couldn't wait to be with him. I had seen my beloved. The love in Ken's face had washed away all my feelings of unworthiness. I was his pure and perfect bride. You may look at your life and wonder how he could love you. You've probably searched for love in all the wrong places. If not physically, many of you have. Many of you have given yourself to somebody without a commitment multiple times. I would venture to say that all of us have done it mentally. And we wonder, how could he marry us as his perfect, unstained bride? We look at ourselves and we see the grease all over our clothes. We see the stains all over everything. And yet, there he is, looking down the aisle, and he's looking at us, and he stands there with the nails in his hands. And he says, I've taken care of it. I have prepared a place for you that's taken care of. It's beautiful. I've already paid for all the stuff. You are beautiful. You have a white garment. Come, just come. I can't wait to be with you. This is what he is saying to every single one of us. And when we get that, it changes everything. That's what the gospel is. And it does change everything. Let's pray.